Hi, this is my first YouTube video. Bit nervous, so if I seem shaky while I talk about my testimony, then just know that this is my first time really like seeing myself in a full video talking to myself, so this is kind of weird. But my name is Adam, and today I'm going to share with you my testimony of how I came to Christ. It was a bit of a, I want to say it's a long road, but I'm only 23, and I know for others it has taken decades, many more hardships, trials, deaths in the family, and whatnot. My testimony is not as extreme, but it does include some shocking details, so please stay tuned. I grew up in a Catholic family. I'm the youngest of five boys, so God bless my mother for giving birth to all of us and going through all of that. So, we went to church every Sunday. We had to go to Sunday school. We were kind of dragged to go to Sunday school. We would go to Sunday school every Sunday and then the church service. And me and all my brothers went through the sacraments. We did communion, confirmation, reconciliation. We went to the religious retreat that the church held. And you know, unfortunately, like I'm the youngest in the family. After I finished confirmation at around the age of 14, I want to say, my dad no longer had us all going to church because by that time it was just me living in the house and the rest of my brothers had moved out. So he didn't feel like he had the authority to force us to come to church anymore because we all had jobs and we had all grown into ourselves. So he just didn't see the need to enforce that sort of thing upon us. So even during the time when I went to church, I experienced pretty bad social anxiety. I just like a lot of people who have experienced social anxiety, it's almost like it's hard to talk to people, hard to make new friends, especially with me, and I have ADHD. I just now learning this within the last year or so. Trying to conjugate a cohesive sentence when talking to people was never really an easy feat for me. And as you'll notice, maybe with a few different moments during this testimony, I may talk quickly, and that is because this is a habit that I am trying to break, and some of my brothers have also fallen into this trap, or maybe this is just a trait that's in our family. It's just maybe lingering anxiety, where we feel like we need to talk quickly, even though we do not need to talk quickly. So yeah, growing up, I had a few friends, in grade school, but I was never really one of the, how you say, popular kids. Um, and that anxiety always lingered with me, and I thought that it would stay at that level for the rest of my life. Like I thought this would be a chain that I would never be able to break. Um, and that kind of carried with me all throughout high school. High school, I feel like the anxiety almost got worse because there was more kids to deal with, and kids are teenagers, so they can be kind of a-holes. So they're less likely to be merciful, especially for those who aren't as socially inept, those who can't really talk to people, can't make as many friends. I would say the friend group I had were people who were also kind of socially anxious, who they would probably consider like quiet or weird. Um, and I still, like, even with that, I played baseball in high school all 4 years. Got moved up to varsity sophomore year. Yeah! I pat myself on the back right there. um, but yeah, it's high school. It's just the anxiety was there the whole time. I was a good student. I did my work, kept my head down, and got pretty much a 3.7 GPA. Um, and even with the anxiety, I kept pushing through. So, yep, got accepted into college. At around this time, I was still living with my parents, but once I got accepted into Towson University, my buddies reached out to me, who were actually some of my buddies who I grew up with in the same neighborhood. So it was a very close knit community I grew up in. They were like, "Hey, we're moving into an apartment near the school. You should come along." And at this time, I still had that fear, the social anxiety aspect of me, because I knew that I would be jumping into unknown territories. I knew that this would mean that I would be going to parties. I would be having the college experience. I'd be meeting girls and talking to girls, which was never my skill set. And I would just be thrown into a lot of uncomfortable situations. If I said uncomfortable situations already, I apologize, but I'll be thrown into situations that will force me to grow inside. It took some back and forth between myself, but I eventually said yes. I moved in with three of my buddies, and this is where I forgot to mention this. Let me backtrack a little bit. In high school, I got introduced to drugs actually by my same buddies. They're great people, but they also, it's high school. You're gonna be introduced to alcohol, marijuana, maybe some other drugs if you unfortunately cross those drugs. But yeah, I got introduced to marijuana by some of my buddies, and they introduced alcohol to me, which was introduced to them by some other people. So we had to indulge. It became a point where it was like every single weekend we would get some bud from someone that one of my friends knew, and we would grab some alcohol and just smoke and drink in my buddy's basement without his mom knowing. I'm sorry if you're watching this video, the mom I'm talking about in this video, but that's what happened. We smoked, we drank, did some stuff we should not have been doing, and I feel like that only fueled my anxiety. And the first lingering, basically the seed was planted for depression. I didn't know until maybe I'm just realizing this now. The seed for depression was kind of planted once I started taking those drugs, because I felt like it wasn't a physical dependency, but I felt like it gave me the ability to push away those bad emotions, those bad experiences that I might have had through high school just by taking these drugs. Now, it was never that I would take these drugs during school, or I would never drink during school like some people might, because I knew I would get caught. I'm a goofy dude, I'm very clumsy, and that's not something I'm savvy enough to get around. I know you can just take eye drops and whatever, smoke between classes and just kind of keep your head down, that sort of thing. But I was never the person to want to smoke during school. I did not have that much of a dependency to it. So luckily it was only on the weekends, maybe like Friday, Saturday. We weren't even really going out to a lot of parties. It was just me and a few of my neighborhood buddies kind of just smoking and drinking in the basement, being delinquents, playing Call of Duty, playing Xbox, high out of our minds, blitzed. But just wanted to get that in there. Yeah, that's where my drug use was introduced. And then college came. And that's when it got much worse. So, this is 2021, 2022. I said I enrolled to Towson University, and I went there for 4 semesters. But during that time, social anxiety still lingering. We got to a point, like my drinking, this is the worst that my drinking had ever gotten. Every single weekend, me and my buddies would throw parties at our apartment Friday and Saturday. So Friday, we would get this big mix and just pour Everclear, tequila, Gatorade, food coloring, whatever we can get our hands on, whatever we could think of, we would pour into that container. And yeah, we would throw these large parties. I mean, I'm saying large, but I mean, it was probably not that big. When I think about it, it's probably 20 people, 30 people most of the time. I mean, sometimes it was smaller, but for the most part, we would just invite whoever and whomever to these parties and to just drink our asses off and feel hungover the next day. Our apartment would be trashed after one of these parties. Drinks everywhere. There was no discipline. We tried our best to keep people out of our rooms. People would just go into the rooms and drink, and that became a problem. Like, people would and we had this one party where this girl I guess ate too much. Sorry for those who are kind of who kind of have a weak stomach. But I guess this Halloween party, this girl ate too much mac and cheese. Ate too much mac and cheese before the party, or ate something. I don't know. I wasn't actually there. I wasn't in the room during this time, but my buddy can attest to the story. This girl ate too much mac and cheese. She ate something of too much, and right before coming to the party. So she came to our party and drank her ass off. Probably had five seltzers or Coronas or whatever, and she just threw up in my buddy's room. Now at this point, it was me and another friend, and then so it was like 2-person for a room and 2 people for a room. And yeah, she just threw up right on the rug during this Halloween party. And yeah, that was not great to clean up, from what my buddy said. I mean, who wants to clean up throw up? But yeah, that's just the sort of shit that we got into during the parties. And another one of these parties, it wasn't as big of a get together, but I decided it would be a great idea, and to show my strength, because I was also working out during this time, to run through my bedroom door. And I also didn't think during this time that it might break my computer, which happened to be sitting right behind it. Like, if you walk into my room, there's a wooden desk very close to the door where, like, I had my computer, my keyboard, and everything, and behind that was my bed. And the other side of the room was my buddy's. So I decided to run full force from, like, our door, from our front door into our bedroom door, and my door just like, just imagine someone put a C4 behind the door, and like, just imagine the door staying intact but just flying forward, like FBI barging into a house. Like, that's kind of like what happened to that door. Luckily, the wooden end table that was holding my PC took most of the force from the door, and the door kind of went to the side. So my like $800 PC that my buddy helped me build could have been destroyed. For whatever reason, this just did not cross my mind that I could destroy something of mine or something of my buddy's who was in the same room. But I'm like, F it. I want to show these girls how tough I am. You know, I had my nice little polo on, little blue polo. I was looking good. I was feeling good, probably because of the alcohol. But ran through the door and took it off the hinges. And let me tell you, my roommate. The person who shared my room was not there at the time, and when he heard about it, he was not too happy about the whole situation. He gave me a pretty long text and yelled at me over the phone. And yep, that was the last time I ever chose to run through a wooden door. So yeah, luckily this is not important, but my brother luckily helped me put the door back on. But yeah, like I knew that, like, I wasn't okay while in college. Like, I knew that this anxiety was holding me back from true happiness, from meeting a girl, from having a girlfriend, from having, friendships where I don't have to worry during each and every social interaction that I'm saying something weird or wrong or out of place. And this always kind of hung over my head. Like, you're going to say something weird, or what? Like, why are they gonna, like, they're gonna think you're weird with how you look. Like, you're gonna say something strange and it's gonna kill the vibe. That's kind of what always stuck with me. And during college, with the alcohol and everything, trying to push those feelings down, it only exasperated what I was feeling. And yeah, and at that time, I had, like, no connection to God. I probably forgot that I went to Sunday school, because, my God was partying. My God, who I worshipped, was the college experience and taking drugs and, barely trying in my classes. I held more importance to making my friends happy than to doing what was right by me. So I'm not trying to knock what my friends had done or like our parties that we threw, because they're great people. Again, they're doing much better now. They're not. Trust, it was kind of just like a college phase. Like, we had all drank, took drugs, did the party experience. So we're all past that now. But yeah, that was just kind of what went on during that time. End of 2022. This is when I switched. I took 2 semesters as a psych major at Towson. I originally went to CCBC around the time when COVID hit, and I switched from an IT major, 2 semesters at CCBC, IT major, then went to Towson. And when I went to Towson, for the 2 semesters, that's when I moved in with my buddies and did all that. But switched to a psych major, took 2 semesters of it. I was always kind of interested in how the brain worked and how like anxiety and depression and all these mental issues play into how people act and the role it plays in decision making and everything like that. But I just didn't have the discipline to stay in college because at that point, in my mind, I had been in school for multiple years, over a decade, growing up, and I had suffered my way through CCBC and those last 2 semesters at Towson. So you know what? I dropped out. I stopped going to Towson. I did not see the need to take any more classes, and it didn't help. In my mind, I did not see the need in becoming a therapist or a counselor or doing anything with the psych degree that I would get, because looking online and seeing the types of careers that matched my personality, like I took one of those Myers-Briggs personality tests in high school, and I saw myself as it was an INFP, so introvert, nurturing, feeling, and perceiving, or something like that. So I always had a heart to help people, even during my darkest times, the darkest times of anxiety and just not feeling worthy enough. So that's why I kind of chose psychology, because maybe I would become a teacher or a counselor or a therapist, something that would align with the results of my Myers-Briggs test. So that's why I went into psychology. But still, seeing that therapists and counselors would need a master's degree and multiple hours of training and shadowing and an apprenticeship never really seemed attractive to me at that time in college. Looking back now, I should have stayed in college and just stuck it out. But I'm still not fully grown as an adult, but I was definitely not an adult at that time. So I wasn't ready mentally to take that next step and to go into that master's program and get my bachelor's degree, then get my master's, So I guess it all worked out how it should. I'll get to that part in just a moment. But so this is the next stage of my life here. When I decided that I did not want to pursue going to school, excuse me, my brother Chris, who had been working in IT for multiple years, excuse me, who had been working in IT for multiple years, had asked me to work there as an intern, because he was a service desk coordinator, so he was kind of like the IT manager within like the department of tech support engineers. And he's like, hey, we have a couple of spots available for an IT intern, so if you want to get some good IT experience, why don't you come along? And it's paid. He had asked me multiple times in the past to work there. The internship probably wasn't available at the time, and I probably wasn't qualified enough years past to even be a tier 1 engineer. But internship, I can come in with little to no IT experience, maybe a little bit of IT experience, but I could apply and get the job. So that's what I did. I saw myself as having no other option. I'm just going to take a full-time job or take a part-time job and see where it goes. So I applied, and got the job in IT with, it was me and a couple of other teenagers. One of them still works there with me. But I worked part-time for 3 months, and my brother's boss saw that I was doing a good job and offered me a full-time position. This is where the hardest period of my life commenced. This is where no other struggle had paled in comparison to what I was about to go through in my life. Now, I was working in the field with a lot of smart people. A lot of smart people. I was comparing myself to others. I basically suffered from imposter syndrome. Basically, in layman's terms, a is the mentality that you do not deserve to be where you're at, where like what you're making, what you're doing, um, is not where your skills align you to be. It's almost like you're unworthy to have what you have. You're an imposter. You shouldn't be there. And that's how I thought. I thought that I did not have the social skills or the organization or just the troubleshooting readiness to be in that position. And like I said, I was a tier 1 help desk support engineer at this time. So I just did not have any sort of confidence in myself. And because of this, the depression that I said was planted back in high school really came to full bloom because of the thoughts I was feeding myself. I was giving in to the negative emotions that was being planted by the enemy. That I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't handsome enough, I wasn't socially inept enough, or socially acceptable enough to be at the company. Because of all the struggles I was going through in IT, all the skills I had to learn, I'm like, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. Even though, monthly we would get reviews at work. My brother actually did my monthly review. We would have one-on-one conversations where he would go over the metrics. Like, they had numbers for how long we solved service tickets, like reviews that we might have gotten, and anything else that would be noteworthy to mention during these meetings. And during these meetings, I felt terrible before having these meetings because I'd be like, oh man, I'm gonna get the worst score, I'm gonna get fired, I'm so stupid, I'm dumb. And I would go into these meetings, my brother is like showing me the numbers on this chart. He's like, dude, you're doing great. You're one of the better tier 1s here. Like, we would get scored, I would get scored 85 for a month, and then 90, and then 85 again, and then 90, and then 90, and then 90. So he's like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about saying that you're not good enough or, you're not doing well. Like, you're obviously doing well, and you're on par with what other tier 1 engineers are doing. So it was all in my mind that I was not good enough, and I was not doing well enough. But still, the depression was holding me down. It had gotten so bad at work that I had even cried in front of my brother at the end of some shifts. I would go into his office after feeling terrible during a day. Even if I did well during the day, there are maybe 3 occasions where he could see it in my eyes, my face, the baggy eyes, the drained look, kind of like the sorrow stature that it had. He could tell that something was wrong. I would go into his office and he would ask me what's up. I would start to talk and I could feel my lips quivering and it I had never felt despair like that, but that was despair. That was depression, that was despair, that was deep sorrow, deep sadness, and I would just bawl my eyes out in front of him. Because I needed an answer. I did not feel like I had any answers. I was lost. And I explained this to my brother, and unfortunately he had never gone through anything like this, so he tried his best to console me. He did the best he could. I'm not discrediting anything that he did or saying he did a bad job. It's just it's tough to relate with someone and empathize with them when you haven't exactly gone through that same situation. So it was nothing that he had done wrong, but it's it was a cry for help, and unfortunately he did not give me the answer that I necessarily wanted, and it's not his fault. It's because what I needed was to be reconciled with our Lord Jesus, which is coming in a little bit. But um, so like after going through like it was like the first year was really tough. I had no idea what was going on. Um, and I eventually watched a self-help, like it was a self-improvement journey video. I can't remember who did the video, but if I remember who it is, or if I find it after this video, I will link it down below because it is a very good video. But in the video, the person explains that, you know, he had a connection to Christ. That prayer was important, and there was this book that he read called Outwitting the Devil. Outwitting the Devil. I think it's Napoleon Hill who wrote the book. And in that story, the first part of the story goes through not his entire life, but his life in his 30s or 40s. That's some of the mistakes that he had made. And and even through that, like, he started to get these revelations where it's like, oh, go into the town and, you know, go into the town with no money and someone will pay you, you know. And he had been looking for the truth. He had started to find that, like, that there was a spiritual being out there that was giving him divine assistance. And he had gotten to such a spiritual level, such a level of spiritual awareness, that he had figured out how to communicate with the devil. And the latter part of the book is the conversation between him and the devil, where he asks a lot of these, you know, seemingly unanswered questions to society, asks the devil how he manipulates people, what he does to take control of the minds of each and every person. And what I read in that book was absolutely astounding. Like, the devil basically said that there are drifters and non-drifters. Drifters are people who seemingly just don't care. They take the first opportunity that comes to them. They use no sense. They use, you know, impulse. They have, you know, they basically allow their emotions to control them. People who, like, you know, yeah, people who basically have no sense of control. People have no self-control in life. And these are the type of people who, you know, don't go to the gym, who are overweight, who, you know, sleep around with whoever they want to sleep around with, and people who are very unhappy. And the devil said that this group of people are the unhappy people who, you know, the devil finds very easy to be ensnared into with the devil. And drifters, you know, he explained, are people who, you know, walk around with a smile on their face. They're ready to get the job done. They have a sense of duty. You know, they're very, you know, they're popular among the people that they're friends with. You know, they do good to others. You know, they're great people, and they have a sort of benevolence about them. And I was sort of looking at myself, and I was becoming a drifter because of the way I was thinking when I read that book. And the book kind of opened my eyes to seeing how, you know, that the devil was likely real, and the devil was controlling us, not just, you know, through the desires of us. Like, we have the desire to eat, the desire to not do certain things. Like, we have these these instant gratification tendencies from all of us to look at social media, to eat something whenever we don't feel well, to sleep around with whoever we want to sleep around with because our wife isn't making us happy because she's nagging, you know. Like, we chase the instant pleasures, but we don't want to do the work to give us future benefits. And that's a good chunk of what the devil told Napoleon Hill during his conversation. And it goes into a lot more detail about, like, the role that that teachers play in keeping people tied down, and just how society feeds upon each other. People in society feed upon each other to keep them ensnared, and just how propaganda feeds us with false information, misinformation. So it's very eye opening. So if you haven't checked it out, please check out Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. That, along with maybe some other self-improvement videos that mention God, sort of planted a seed in my heart that there are divine forces out there, definitely of evil, but of good. After looking into it for a bit, I'll explain that in a second, but one of our apartment parties that we had during the time when I was working at our company and was, basically in the depths of depression, sorrow, just deep sadness, I had, excluded myself from the party, because a lot of people who are depressed want to self-isolate. They want to isolate themselves from others because they don't want people to see that version of themselves. They don't want to drain the energy of others, so they want to isolate themselves to kind of keep the poison away. That's how I felt. Not sure whoever watches this video may have that same mindset about depression, but you almost want to keep yourself away from everyone else. And that's what I did during the party. I had kept myself away from my friends and some of their girlfriends of the group. One of the girlfriends of the group happened to notice that I was in the room by myself, sulking, crying, and she came in and started to talk with me through my problems. And I had told her that it's just a very tough period right now. I don't see myself as valuable to anyone. I still want a girlfriend, this and that, just kind of airing out my grievances about myself and about, society and everything. And she was like, I'm not sure if you're religious, but I believe in God, and I believe that He has a plan for your life. He wants you to get better. The suffering is only temporary because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I can't even lie, that planted an even bigger seed in my heart, knowing that God may be out there and may be watching over me, even during my darkest periods of my life. That God may have been walking with me, God may have been a light, beneath my feet, a lamp, or I think it's a lamp under my bed, a light among the paths of my feet. And that had really struck a chord with me. And it was one of the nicest things I had seen someone do, was to console someone through their pain like that. She might have gotten maybe a direction from God to come into the room that night and to speak with me, knowing that I was in such pain, such displeasure, such disdain with who I was. I genuinely rejected who I was. I wanted to be anyone else. And it did not help that I had a brother and a manager, the same brother that worked with me at our IT company, who I saw as borderline perfect. He was like the jack of all trades. He could fix anything. He was smart, he was funny, he was good looking, and I saw myself as being less than him because I had some skills, or I was missing a lot of skills that he seemed to have, and he was only 6 years older than me. So in my mind, I was like, why at this point in my life am I not on par with him? Which is insane to think about, because we're all made in the image of God. We're all made unique and special and in our own character. We all have our own separate traits. So who am I to discount what God has made and to try to be someone else? What's the point of that? And plus, since he had 6 years on me, he was able to probably learn a lot of useful skills that I haven't had the chance to learn, like fixing cars and just being a handyman. And I'm sure his social skills have grown since he's been at the job. So in essence, it was like folly. It was a waste of time for me to worry about that. What I should have worried about was just doing the best I could and just being grateful that I even had the job and I had that experience. But that's not what I was thinking about at the time. I just wanted to be anyone else, and I was doing whatever I could to try to please others by the way I was speaking or what I was doing. So I had no real agency who I was because I was being controlled by the devil in more ways than not, and I just did not want to be myself. It had gotten so bad where I wasn't right there, but I was a few steps away from maybe ending my own life because I hated myself so much. I hated who God had made me to be. And I hated that he had given me these traits that had caused me so much pain. But in reality, it was myself. I was causing my own pain. I was allowing the devil to take control of my thoughts and my feelings and my motivations. And it's not God's fault that I had suffered from this. It was me. It was me. And if you are blaming God for something that's happening in your life, just know that he may be using your suffering for your salvation. He may be allowing you to go through trials to help fuel your testimony. Which obviously none of this I was thinking about at the time. I was just hating myself. But luckily it was only for a short period of time where I had been considering ending my own life, but that had went away shortly thereafter. After the encounter that I had with one of the girlfriends of the group, I knew that I had to persevere and I had to make it through this dark period of my life. And this was only temporary. Even during those darkest periods after that, I could sense that God was telling me to persevere, to continue, to overcome the sadness and depression that was so clearly pulling me down. So I persevered. These self-help videos and books. I bought a bunch of books like Atomic Habits, Outwitting the Devil, How to Take Smarter Notes. I don't know why I bought a book about how to take smarter notes and I never even read it, and there was no point to even I wasn't even in school, so that book was sort of a waste of time. I bought this book by Jim Quick about how to optimize your brain, and I'm kind of glad I did buy all those books because I had started to notice that reading these books started to bring the brain power back into me, because I'm not sure if whoever's watching this video has experienced depression, but your energy is drained, your enjoyment for activities that you had found enjoyment before is gone. You don't want to speak to anyone, you want to self-isolate, and your energy is just completely drained. You feel tired all the time. So you clearly do not feel like the best version of yourself. It's not great. And I lament, and I have deep grief for anyone who is going through this, because it's debilitating, and it's the reason why a lot of people commit suicide, because of depression, because it stops you from doing actions that will help get you out of depression. Because all that you want during depression is to just have the pain go away. So that's why a lot of people resort to drugs and alcohol to sort of numb the pain. They resort to these quick pleasures, these quick desires of theirs. They want to eat that donut just to make them feel better. They want to have that ice cream. They want to have that popcorn or that beer. Excuse me. Just so that that what they're thinking about may be pushed away for a short period of time. But it always comes back. It always comes back. The food, the beer, the sex, it does not solve your problem unless you go to the root of the problem. So the self-help books started to help me out. Those self-improvement videos started to help me. I watched a lot of self-improvement videos, which helped me out a lot. But in essence, I was watching too many of those because a lot of those videos say the same thing: just to eat well, sleep 8 hours a day, meditate. I was big into meditation at the time when I was suffering from depression. I would sit in my car and I would use a meditation app and just meditate for 10 minutes every day. And I could feel a grow in my divine connection, my connection with the divine, which is now God. I know is God. But I did not have a label on the divine connection. But I could feel that there was a spiritual world out there that was waiting to be discovered. So I had followed a lot of those principles from the self-improvement videos, and you know what? They really did help me out. I even through the depression, I was working out 3-4 days a week. My diet was crap. For what I was eating along with the workouts, so I wasn't gaining a whole lot of muscle. I was, it was half-ass eating. I mean, now I meal prep, but back then I would just kind of not track my macros. I would eat fast food half of the week, even though I think it would be enough protein. It probably was not enough protein. But yeah. Around that time, I decided to go to therapy because that's the same girl that went into my room was the same person that suggested that I go to therapy. And going to therapy was one of the greatest things I had ever done. Luckily, I had a good counselor that helped me realize that my thinking patterns were what was causing me my own pain, my own sorrow. She labeled it as cognitive distortion, where these sort of debilitating beliefs, these lies that we feed ourselves, are what we cling on to. So our thinking is distorted, and what we think is important, what is actually not important, is what is brought to the forefront of our attention. We put all of our energy into that and ignoring other parts of our life. So that's what I was doing. I was so focused on pleasing others that it was causing my own pain and not allowing me to give energy to other sides of my life that I should have been giving energy to. So that process, I went to therapy for maybe a year and a half, and then I moved to another therapist, and that slowly helped, and it really started to bring me peace. It really started to bring me peace. But I could still feel that something was missing. Even though my depression was starting to fade away, I could still feel that, my anxiety was running rampant. Even if the depression was starting to fade away, the anxiety was still there. So I started to take medication. That helped, but still there was something missing. There's still something missing, maybe a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in my life. A deep connection with the world at large is what I was missing. So one day, I got invited to church by the same girl that came in my room and consoled me that one night, as well as my one buddy and his now ex-girlfriend. While we were riding up to the church, I could feel this immersive goosebump-like feeling, this sort of heat that went throughout my entire body. It was like nothing I had ever felt before. The lingering depression and anxiety that I was feeling at that time was non-existent during the service. We had 5 random people come up to us and say hi, and The last church that we went to, the Catholic church that we went to, was not like that. Not knocking the church, but it was a very traditional church, and I never felt a connection with God during there. But if you do feel a connection to Catholic churches and you go through the sacraments, more power to you. But I had never felt that sort of way about God going to that old church. But going to this new church, my friend said that it was non-denominational, and I had never even heard that term until, a couple days before we went to church. But yeah, sitting in that church service was like nothing I had ever felt. It was an unexplainable sense of peace, a calm, a tranquil feeling. I was glued to the seat. I was watching the sermon, and I was actively listening. It's like I wanted to listen now to what he was saying about Jesus and about the gospel. And I can't remember a single sermon during growing up in Catholic church where I wanted to listen, but this is one where I felt like I had to listen. But ever since that experience, I knew that there was something to the faith. I knew that Jesus knows about each and every one of us, and he has a plan for our lives. And the struggles, the hardships that we go through are temporary. They're temporary, and they are put in our lives. They're orchestrated by God for us to grow in certain ways that he sees that we need growing. Help us to sculpt us into an image that is more like him. So I'm forever grateful that the Lord had met me during that church. The Holy Spirit was filled within me, and I had never felt that sort of peace in my life, ever. It was a peace that I could never get playing video games or eating a chocolate donut from Krispy Kreme. It was a peace that surpasses all understanding. And ever since that point, I was, slowly but surely on fire for the Lord. I had gone to that same church maybe 2 or 3 more times over the span of 2 months, still thinking about that experience. I did not get that same experience going back the 2 times or 3 times, but I still was engaged. I still was engaged in the sermons that the priests were giving, or the pastors. That the pastors were giving. I felt connected with the message of the gospel, and about the teachings and the actions that Jesus had performed and the miracles. I had actually believed in now that he had done what was written of him. A few months pass, and I get invited to another church by one of the buddies who came with me during that time. It was a church that was closer to our apartment, and as soon as we went there, I felt that there was something different about this church, that I was called to be here, or I felt like it actually felt like home. Like I was finally in full communion with our Creator, our Savior, Jesus. And it was so welcoming, and it was a bit bigger than the last church I went to, and it was crazy. Like walking in, this is irrelevant, but walking in, sitting down, there are a couple of TVs up near the stage where it gives you a little countdown until the service starts, and then I saw 2 people talking on the TV screen. Like, what is this, ESPN? Is there a pregame sportscast? What's going on? Are they going over highlights? Oh my gosh, what's going on here? But yeah, it was just 2 people at the church just talking about just general stuff, just talking about the upcoming service, just being all nice and cheerful. I'm like, man, that's kind of nice. And this church had RGB lights everywhere, and they had the big stage. They had a separate glass window next to the stage where you could see someone getting baptized. So this is a wild experience for me. I had never been to a church like this. And I had been going to this church since about November 2024. And since November 2024, I've been going to that church every single Sunday. I've been watching a bunch of videos. Ever since then, I'd watch a bunch of videos about Jesus, about people who minister to others out in public, who evangelize, who talk about the gospel even in the face of oppression and badgering and bullying and people being spat on. Like it was inspiring to see some of these videos, and even just in the church, people talking about Jesus with such confidence, with such a discernment, with such conviction, that like they had no fear talking about the Lord. And I could start to feel what they were feeling. I felt the fire burning in my heart to know more about the Lord and about his message and about the gospel and just about the good news. Watched a bunch of videos, since then I still do. I watch a bunch of videos about gospel, evangelizing, Jesus in general, prophecies, just how it all comes full circle, how everything that we know was created by God in his image. We were created in his image, but some other things weren't. But everything was created by God. And we were put on this earth to help spread his ministry, to glorify his name through his will for our lives. Like one person's will might be to be a school teacher, just to help be a kind and merciful presence to the children as they grow up. Someone might be a hospital nurse who tends to and cares for people, in their lowest states, in their physically debilitating states. Someone might be a businessman who helps to create jobs for God's people. Someone who helps to facilitate and organize agreements that will help build God's community at large, in and out of the church. So we all have a separate will for our lives. What I might be called to do may not be the same thing as what you might be called to do. So this can be a whole other video, but try not to compare your journey with someone else's journey, because they are a completely different person made in God's image, and you are not them. But to get back on the topic, sorry if I get off topic, it's because I like I mentioned before, I'm slowly learning that I have ADHD and I get off topic sometimes, so let me try to stay on topic here. But yeah, I've been on fire for the Lord ever since November 2024. In February 2025, I got baptized through the church. My whole family came, and it was a great experience. It was a great experience. I could feel the Lord working through me. There's only I have a relatively large family. It's me, my 4 brothers, my mom, and my dad. And unfortunately, I think I'm the only one in my family that's actually born again, who has that fire in their heart to want to know the Lord. Because my dad, who brought us to church growing up, doesn't see the need to go to church. He doesn't have that fire, that passion in his heart, even though he has had some divine experiences. I think he does believe in God, but he doesn't have that yearning to get to know him and to read the Bible and to extend his ministry. And neither does my mom. Also, my mom said that she prays semi often. And it's not like you have to go to church. If you don't go to church, you're not born again. That's not what I'm saying. But I just feel like I'm blessed to be at this stage of my life in my spiritual journey, to where I can preach to them, I can evangelize to my family, and to show them God's character and who he really is in relation with everything that's happening in our world, good and bad. So I have evangelized to each and every one of my immediate family members, and Like even in my aunts and my uncles, there's only a couple of them out of like 20, 30, and cousins that are, I'd say, born again, who have had this encounter with the Holy Spirit and have the fire in the heart to want to know Jesus. So it's hard to see them not have the same passion for Jesus as you might, because you want them to have the same level of peace that you may have. You want them to know the Lord like you know the Lord, but it's not something that they will realize immediately, because looking back on my own experience, it took me years to get to this point. So I can't expect them to have a wild revelation, a drastic change of heart immediately, because it's not realistic. And I'm sure that's not what the Lord wants. I mean, I'm sure the Lord wants everyone to come back to them in communion, but it is a process of justification and sanctification. So that's a whole other topic, but and since then, like I also preached out in the open for the first time about a month and a half ago. I went out with no notes. I just went out with myself, the heart, the fire of the Holy Spirit. I went out into I now live at my brother's house, but I went out into the it was like a couple of walkways outside of our apartment complex, where you go from building to building. I was just out there preaching my heart out about the gospel, telling them about the grace and the mercy of our Lord Jesus, and there seemed to be no one out there, but I just still wanted to have that experience to show them who the Lord was. So that's something I will definitely be doing in the future, maybe with other people, maybe with people working with me, but where am I going with this? So yeah, very recently, this is the last part, testimony up until right now. Yeah, I've faith has grown exponentially over the past few months. I now dedicate time every day to read the Bible, take notes. I try to pray, before each and every meal. I pray maybe 5 times a day, five, 6, 7. Whenever it seems fit, whenever I need to have a moment of connection with the Lord. And I have a little booklet where I ask questions to God and He answers them, and I'll write down His responses. And sometimes those messages will help me later on when I'm confused about something, or if I feel conviction, I'll look to the words that God has given me through my thoughts, and I'll write them down. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That really helps me in this situation. But yeah, I have a more prayerful life. I feel a lot more connected with God. I'm reading the Word. I'm going to church. I'm volunteering at church now. And it's been a wild journey for me. It's not without its problems. I'm still being convicted every single day by God to do things or to not do certain things. Like what I had enjoyed before, like drinking and playing video games and just goofing off and this and that, is not as appealing to me anymore. Like the Lord is pushing me toward bigger and better things, even if it's not going to benefit me in the moment. He's pushing me to do bigger and better things for the enhancement of His kingdom. Before I finish up this testimony, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. I was worried about for the longest time that I was not good enough to have a girlfriend, that like I wasn't social enough or funny enough or cool enough, and I just didn't see myself as a worthwhile partner for anyone. And after having that divine experience with God and going to church and all that, and feeling the best that I had ever felt. I was almost angry at the Lord. I'm like, Lord, why haven't you brought me a girlfriend? Why haven't you given me this happiness? Because I'm being so faithful to you, Lord. I am being a willing servant. I'm reading the word. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Why haven't you brought me the person of my dreams? And it's crazy. This is me, like, not even maybe like 5 months ago. And this happened like right before Bible study. I was like in the car, music was off. I had parked at the church and I was like screaming at God. And he said, "You're not ready yet." Not vocally, but through my thoughts, I had gotten the message, "You are not ready yet." And I'm like, "What do you mean, God? I am ready." He said, "You are not ready yet." And I kind of took that message and threw it away. And I basically told God, "I am ready. I'm going to take this into my own hands. Doesn't matter what you think. I'll be fine." And at that point, he must have been like, "Okay, do what you want." A month, basically 3 weeks later, or it was a short period after that, I met this girl at church, who had checked off boxes for the type of person I kind of sort of wanted in a relationship, but I never had that sort of spark in my heart to like. I never had that actual like. I never had a deep attraction to her. She's attractive, but she's not necessarily my type, and not super compatible with me. Even though she's a great person, and I wish the best for her. But we dated for a month, and I rushed into things. Like within 3 weeks, I asked her to be my girlfriend. I wanted to do certain things that I think that people in relationships would do, and she sensed that. She sensed that I wanted to fit this relationship in a certain box. Like we need to check off certain things on our list, or we wouldn't be a legit couple. And during one of our dates, like she brought that up to me, and and yeah, long story short, that was our last date. It was a bit emotional, but because I knew in her heart that she was right. Like we had rushed into the relationship, and like it wasn't what I needed at my life in that time. So in essence, the Lord was right. I had rushed myself into a relationship that I had no business rushing into. I just wanted to rush into it because I wanted to rush into it. I was more interested in the relationship than the person. And I'm sorry if you're watching this video, nothing against you. There's nothing you did wrong. You're a great person. I hope the absolute best for you. But I just wasn't in the right mindset at the time for a relationship. And so it was tough listening to the Lord, because looking back on it, he was completely right. I wasn't ready. So, but I decided to shake it off, and I moved on. So very recently at work, it was over a weekend or so, I kept my desire to work hard at work, started to dwindle. Not saying I wasn't doing a good job, but like my enjoyment at work was dwindling. I still felt like I was trying to serve God through what I was doing, like just doing the best I could, and treat every event like you're dealing with Jesus or whatever. But I was losing contentment in my job. Like I was being called to something else. And I kept getting messages from God like, your time is done. Your time is done. Or like your job is done. I'm like, what? So he was giving me messages that like I no longer needed to work at my job. Like I like this stage of my life was ending. So I recently put in my 3 months at work, And after doing a lot more research, I feel like my heart has connected with the idea of being a counselor. Being a counselor, because with everything that's been going on in my life, all these experiences, the hardships, the struggles, the heartaches, the spiritual journey, I feel like the Lord had me go through these experiences to build me into a person to shepherd others, to be a shepherd for those lost, for those who are weak mentally, those who are going through the same mental struggles that I went through, for those who seem not worthy or just just incompetent, those who don't feel like they deserve to live on this earth. And I think looking into it more, and he wants me to be, the shoulder to cry on, the person to help others. So I decided to, this January, I'm going to re-enroll to Towson University, and I'm going to become a counselor. I'm going to re-enroll, get my bachelor's, apply for the master's program, hopefully get in, and I'm going to get my master's in psychology to hopefully then become a counselor and either start my own practice or just join a what is it, like a group that has licensed counselors working in it. Because I feel like that's actually where the Lord is leading me, and I feel my heart is content with this decision. A lot of people would be scared leaving a full-time job with benefits, and it's a job that's close, but I feel content with my decision. It's going to be a tough road for the next few years. Going to need to maybe get a full-time or a part-time job or 2 part-time jobs while I go back to school at Towson, or maybe 1 part-time job and to do a side hustle while I navigate through this different period of my life. But all I know is that I'm going to trust in the Lord and His process, and He will make my paths clear, even if I'm going through the storm. So I think I have covered everything with my testimony. I can explain other details of my story maybe in other videos if I make other videos, but for now, hopefully I explained everything well enough to where you hadn't clicked off the video by now. So thank you if you stayed to the end of this video and heard my testimony. So hopefully you like it, share it to those who may need to hear about my struggles and about the journey. Yeah, thank you so much.